They say the darkest hour is just before dawn, but for many of us after 70, the darkest hour comes much earlier, around 3 a.m. If you've ever found yourself awake at that hour, lying in bed with nothing but the silence of the house and the steady beating of your heart, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not just sleeplessness. It's not just age. It's something deeper, something quieter, something that no doctor or clock can fix. And if you're feeling that too, please stay with me. Because this quiet ache, this empty space at 3 a.m., might be your heart sending you a message you've needed to hear for a long time. Many older adults think waking up at 3 a.m. is just a random fluke, or perhaps the byproduct of an aging body. Maybe you blamed it on needing to use the bathroom, or on a sore hip that won't let you sleep. But tonight, I want to suggest something else. What if your heart knows something your mind hasn't fully caught up with? What if waking up at that hour isn't a mistake, but a signal, a whisper from the deepest part of you, asking you to pay attention before more time quietly slips away? Loneliness after 70 isn't always loud. It doesn't always come crashing into our lives like a storm. Most of the time, it seeps in softly, like a slow fog curling around your ankles. You don't notice it at first. You go about your day, keeping busy with routines, television shows, errands, polite conversations, but then, when the world goes dark and quiet, when no one needs you to do anything, no one's calling, no one's expecting anything at all, you realize something is missing, and that something is not small, it's vast, it's aching, it's the need for connection, real, soul-deep connection. Maybe it's the old friends you lost touch with over the years, the ones you always meant to call but somehow didn't. Maybe it's family that's moved far away, living their own busy lives. Maybe it's the loss of a spouse, or the slow fading of old passions you used to share with someone who is no longer here. And so, at 3 a.m., when all the distractions have fallen away, what's left is the naked truth. Your heart misses being needed. Your soul misses being truly seen. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, recognizing this longing is one of the bravest, healthiest things you can do, because acknowledging the ache means you're still alive inside. It means there's still a flame flickering within you, even if it's small, and that flame deserves to be fed. Before we go deeper, if you're still with me right now, if you're reading this and recognizing that soft, persistent ache in your own life, I want to invite you to stay with me until the end of this journey. And if you think someone you care about might be feeling this too, someone who perhaps hasn't been able to put it into words, I encourage you to share this with them. You never know when a simple act of sharing could open a door someone desperately needed. Now, let's walk further into this together, because if you're waking up lonely at 3 a.m., it's not just about wanting someone to talk to, it's about what your heart is really longing for. And the first longing, the one we so often bury beneath layers of pride and self-reliance, is the longing to still matter. After 70, the world doesn't ask much of us anymore. In fact, sometimes it feels like it barely notices us at all. The phone rings less often, invitations slow down. People assume you're tired, or fragile, or simply not interested. It's a painful irony when you finally have the wisdom, the time, and the depth of experience to offer something truly valuable. The world seems too distracted to listen, but that doesn't mean your gifts aren't needed. It doesn't mean your stories, your presence, your laughter, your hard-earned compassion don't have a place. The heart aches at 3 a.m. because it still wants to give. It still wants to love, to nurture, to be a force of good in someone else's life. And when that need goes unmet, when there's no outlet for the love still burning inside you, loneliness grows like a vine, slowly wrapping around your spirit, squeezing just a little tighter each night. But here's something I want you to remember. Just because the world doesn't automatically knock on your door anymore, doesn't mean the world has no need for you. It just means you might have to knock first. And that can be frightening. It can feel vulnerable, but it can also be one of the most life-affirming things you do. When was the last time you reached out? Not because you had to, but because you chose to? When was the last time you called an old friend just to say, "I miss your voice," or wrote a letter to someone you love, even if they don't write back often? Sometimes the smallest gestures, sharing a meal, volunteering a few hours, joining a local group, even commenting warmly on a stranger's story online, can begin to stitch back the torn fabric of connection. And maybe, just maybe, it's not only your heart that needs it. Maybe someone out there is lying awake at 3 a.m. too, feeling the same ache, praying quietly for someone like you to appear. The second longing that often stirs at that lonely hour is the longing for meaning. After a lifetime of work, family, responsibility, and chasing goals, retirement can sometimes feel like stepping off a moving train without knowing where you're supposed to go next. Days stretch long. The busyness that once defined you fades. You might find yourself wondering, what now? What am I here for? And those questions don't disappear with age. They grow louder. If you're feeling that emptiness, you're not alone. It's not because you failed. It's because the human heart was never meant to be idle. It was meant to create, to build, to grow. No matter how many candles are on the birthday cake. Whether it's learning something new, mentoring someone younger, crafting something beautiful with your hands, or simply nurturing a garden of kindness in your community, your purpose doesn't retire just because you do. In fact, some of the most profound contributions you can make are the ones that come after 70. When your hands are slower but your heart is deeper, when your ambitions are quieter but your wisdom roars. And if you stay with me, I'll show you something powerful, how small acts of meaning, practiced daily, can completely transform that 3 a.m. hour from one of sorrow into one of deep peace. So, if you've been lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering what's wrong with you, why you can't just sleep through like you used to, why your chest sometimes feels heavy, even though there's nothing specifically wrong, I want you to know, you're not broken, you're not alone, and no, it's not too late to give yourself what your heart is quietly asking for. There's a third longing that often stirs in the early hours, the longing for peace, not just the absence of noise, but true inner calm. After a lifetime of expectations, disappointments, unresolved conversations, old regrets that never got closure, and mistakes that still replay in the quiet of the night, the soul begins to crave forgiveness, and sometimes, the one person we most need to forgive is ourselves. You might think back to something you said or didn't say, a moment you walked away instead of staying, a person you loved but couldn't reach. Maybe it was your child, maybe your partner, maybe a version of yourself from long ago that you no longer recognize, but still carry. These things have a way of resurfacing when the world sleeps, and in the darkness, they grow louder. But here's what I've learned from many wise souls who've walked this road before us. Healing is still possible. Even at 75, even at 85, the heart doesn't understand calendars. It only understands truth. And the courage to speak it, even if only in whispers, even if only to yourself, writing a letter you'll never send, saying words out loud in an empty room, visiting a grave or a memory and finally letting go. These are not acts of weakness. They are acts of profound strength. And when you begin to let go, even gently, something changes. That pressure in your chest lifts a little. That ache at 3 a.m. becomes softer. Your body may still wake, but your spirit no longer trembles, because peace is not found in perfect circumstances. It's found in honest acceptance. And when you stop resisting your past, your age, your mistakes, and instead begin to see them as part of the same beautiful, messy, aching human journey, the loneliness at night begins to shift into something else, stillness. And in that stillness, a new kind of strength is born. If you're still with me now, I want to pause for a second and simply say, thank you. Thank you for staying, for reading, for allowing yourself to feel. And if this is resonating, even a little, please consider sharing it with someone you care about. So many of us suffer in silence, thinking we're the only ones awake at 3 a.m., when in truth, there are thousands, maybe millions, just like us. holding on to quiet pain that deserves gentler light. Now, let's return to that quiet room, to that moment in the dark when your eyes are open, but your soul is searching. Because there's one more thing that often calls out in those hours, something so tender, so hidden, that most of us never speak of it. It's the longing to be held. And I don't just mean physically, I mean emotionally, spiritually. To be held in someone's gaze and not feel judged. To be held in someone's thoughts and feel safe. To know that somewhere, someone sees you not as a burden, not as an old person, not as someone past their prime, but as a soul still worthy of tenderness. We all crave that, no matter our age. But after 70, that craving can feel sharper, because the opportunities to be truly seen grow fewer. Children grow up, partners pass away, the world moves fast, while we slow down. And sometimes, the simple act of being touched by a hand, a word, a memory, can feel like water in the desert. But let me tell you this, your capacity to receive love hasn't diminished, and neither has your capacity to give it. And the beautiful thing is, when you give that kind of presence to others, even in small ways, you often receive it back tenfold. A warm conversation with someone who serves your coffee, a shared memory with someone at the market, a heartfelt comment on a community page. These are not nothing. These are soul exchanges. And when done with intention, they can remind your heart that it still belongs. Because maybe what your heart is really longing for at 3 a.m. isn't just company, it's presence. Not noise, not busyness, just one other soul willing to sit in the silence with you and say, I see you, you still matter. And maybe, just maybe, the first person who can offer that is you. It's a strange realization, isn't it? That after all these years, after a life full of roles, responsibilities, schedules, and rushing, you find yourself longing for nothing more than quiet presence, not applause, not achievement, just someone to sit beside you in the stillness. Just a gentle voice saying, you're not alone in this. And maybe the most surprising thing is that presence doesn't always have to come from another person. Sometimes, the first step toward healing is learning how to offer it to yourself. You've lived through decades of noise, of giving to others, of being needed. And now, when the phone is silent and the calendar is empty, the question shifts. Can you be with yourself without rushing to fill the silence? Can you listen to your heart like you used to listen to others? Not to judge it, but to honor it? This is where healing begins. Not by fixing something, but by recognizing that you were never broken. You were just tired of running, tired of pretending to be fine. And 3 a.m., in all its raw, stripped-down quiet, gives you a chance to stop pretending. So what if you made a small promise tonight, not to change everything, not to chase away the loneliness all at once, but simply to begin sitting with it, kindly, to light a candle when you wake instead of turning on the harsh light, to make a cup of tea not to fall asleep faster, but to sit and soothe your soul, to place a photo near your bed, not to cling to the past, but to remind yourself that love existed and still does in you, because even in loneliness, there is beauty. There is a kind of depth and wisdom that only comes from having walked through many seasons of life and still being here, still waking, still feeling, and that matters. You matter. If you're still watching or reading this far, I want to ask something of you, not for me, but for the part of you that's still awake inside. If this has touched something in you, if you found yourself nodding quietly, feeling seen in ways that don't often happen, don't keep it to yourself, share it. Maybe with a friend, a sibling, someone who's been distant lately, or post it somewhere someone else might find it in their own dark hour. Because the moment we begin to speak these silent truths out loud, we realize we were never truly alone, just unheard. And speaking of being heard, there's something else I want to share. One of the most transformative shifts that can happen after 70 is not what you do for others, but how you begin to speak to yourself. At 3 a.m., Most of us replay old conversations, not the joyful ones, but the regrets. We remember where we fell short, what we should have said, the people we lost, or pushed away, or never quite reached. But what if, instead of replaying blame, you started whispering kindness? I did the best I could with what I knew then. I'm still learning how to forgive myself. I'm allowed to rest now. I'm allowed to soften. That kind of inner voice, gentle, forgiving, present, is the antidote to so much of the ache we carry. And the amazing thing is, once you begin offering it to yourself, it becomes easier to extend that same grace outward. You begin to look at your adult children, your younger neighbors, even strangers, with more softness, less expectation, more compassion, and slowly, subtly, the loneliness starts to shift. It may not vanish, but it stops being an enemy. It becomes, instead, a quiet companion. A reminder that you are still alive, still open, still reaching for something meaningful. And you know what? That's more than enough. There's something sacred about the stillness of 3 a.m. At first, it feels empty, haunting, even. But if you stay long enough, if you let yourself settle into the quiet without fear, you might begin to feel something else, a shift, a sense that this hour, so often dreaded, is not a curse, but an invitation. Because in the daylight, we're too busy, too distracted. Even after retirement, our minds still buzz with memories, to-do lists, silent responsibilities. But at 3 a.m., everything slows. There are no masks to wear, no conversations to navigate, no expectations to fulfill, just you, your breath, and the rhythm of your own heart. And in that raw silence, something begins to emerge, a gentle longing not to be younger, or faster, or stronger, but to be fully present, exactly as you are now. The truth is, 3 a.m. has always been a portal, a quiet threshold between what was and what could still be. It's the hour of poets, of prayers whispered into the dark, of thoughts that dare to surface only when everything else is asleep. Maybe that's why you're awake, not because something is wrong, but because your soul has something to say, and it needs silence to say it. What if you treated this time as sacred, instead of shameful? What if, rather than seeing it as a problem to fix, you saw it as a window, a space carved out by time itself, just for you? You don't have to fill it with noise. You don't have to do anything. Just be, breathe, listen, and if something stirs inside, an old memory, a new idea, a quiet tear, let it, because that's life still flowing through you. And there's something else. When you begin honoring this hour, something magical happens. You stop fearing it, you stop resisting it, and in doing so, it loses its power to hurt you. It becomes yours again, yours to shape, to soften, to transform. Maybe tonight, you light a candle. Tomorrow, you write a few lines in a notebook. The next day, you speak a single sentence into the dark. I'm still here. And the more you do this, the less lonely it becomes, because presence invites peace, peace invites connection, and slowly, the world starts responding. You find yourself more open to small joys in the day, a smile from the mail carrier, a kind word from a neighbor, a bird on the windowsill that feels like it's singing just for you. And maybe, just maybe, one day soon, someone else will say to you, I've been waking up at 3 a.m. too. And in that moment, your story, your silence, your courage to sit with the night, it will matter deeply to someone else. If you're still reading this, still walking with me through this quiet hour, I want you to know you are not invisible. You are not forgotten. You are part of a quiet army of souls who are rediscovering what it means to be alive. Not in spite of the night, but because of it. You are not a burden. You are a keeper of stories, of love that still wants to give, of wisdom still waiting to be spoken. And this hour, lonely as it may seem, might be the beginning of your next chapter. And so, here we are, at the end of this quiet walk through the night. But perhaps, if you felt any warmth stir within you, this isn't an ending at all. Maybe it's the beginning of a gentler way to hold yourself when the rest of the world is asleep. Because 3 a.m. will still come. There will still be nights when your body wakes before your mind is ready. But now, maybe you won't greet it with dread. Maybe you'll greet it like an old companion. Like a space carved out by time for you to simply be, without having to explain, fix, or apologize for anything. Maybe next time you wake, you'll place a hand on your chest and feel the steady beat that's carried you through 7 decades of joy and sorrow, of triumph and heartbreak, and you'll whisper, "I'm still here, and I still matter." Maybe you'll walk quietly to the window and look out at a world that's still sleeping, and instead of feeling left out, you'll feel ahead. Like you've arrived in a sacred space before anyone else, a sacred stillness where the veil between the heart and the soul feels thinner, more honest, more whole, and maybe you'll remember something you heard here. Not my words, but what they awoke in you. That longing is not weakness, it is a sign you're alive. That loneliness is not proof of failure, it is proof of love unspent, of tenderness still waiting to find a home. If you ever feel alone again at 3 a.m., come back to this moment. Come back to your breath, to your stories, to your strength, and know this: you are not forgotten, you are not too late. There are still hands to hold, still words to speak, still mornings that haven't yet arrived, and they are waiting for you. And if any part of this touched something inside you, I have one gentle request. Please share it, not for numbers, not for clicks, but for the soul who might be lying in their bed right now, in another house, in another country, staring at their ceiling and wondering if anyone else feels the way they do. Maybe that person is someone you love. Maybe it's someone who once sat beside you in silence and never found the words. Maybe it's someone who just needs to hear, "You are not the only one awake tonight." So if you're still here, thank you. From one restless heart to another, thank you for having the courage to feel, to stay, to be present. And may the next time you wake at 3 a.m., you meet yourself with the gentleness you always deserved, because you are not just surviving the night, you are learning how to shine in it.